What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be talking about component state and also building a counter application, so that way we could get a better understanding of component states as well. So let's get right into the video. So what is a component state? Well, it's basically a data for a component. Let's look at that in the old application. So over here, what we did was we would actually grab an app, a data set right here, and change the data around it. Well, that's exactly what we're going to be doing, but with the component state, the React's way of doing this thing. Basically it gives us two things. We could manipulate the data. Instead of actually having a global data set right here, it's not going to be global. And secondly, this render function right here, well, we would have to call this manually. If you recall, we did have to call it manually. But with component state, the thing about it is that once we change the state or the data inside of it, it'll automatically re-render itself. So it'll take care of it for us. All we have to do is change the data for the component, and that's all we're going to be doing. So it's going to be cleaner code, and also it's going to help us out a lot, especially in big projects. If you don't want to keep on doing re-render, I mean, it's a bad practice. But so yeah, I mean, that's a lot of, I told you what it is. So let's actually get into it, so that way you understand a little bit more. And this is why we're going to be building out a counter app, so that way you understand it way more in depth, and yeah, all that. So what I'm going to do in fun, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it counter. Just like that, .js. And inside of package.json, instead of running our fun right here, instead of running our app, or we're going to be running our app. Sorry about that. Hold on. Here it is. The toggle, this is what I was finding. Instead of running the toggle.js we had previously, we're going to be running our counter.js. So I'm going to just change toggle to counter. And so that way, once we build it out, it'll start rendering out our counter app. And this is what we're going to be using right now. So let's get building this application. So the first thing I want to do is create a class for a counter. So we're going to create class counter extends react dot component. And I hate it when it does that. React dot component. All right. In here, we're going to have our render method, or our function, and obviously we're going to have a return of what we want to return. This should not be new, so if it is, you might want to check out the other videos I've been doing. In here, we do need a single group. So always have your div up on top. Okay, so we're gonna do 4 things in here. An H1 just to see our counter, and 3 buttons. These 3 buttons is going to be +1, -1, and reset. That's basically it, and you probably could go ahead and do this on your own. All I want you to do is 4 things. The H1 that would give out the counter, the actual number of the counter, and 3 buttons, and actually do the on-click events as well. That's going to handle these functions, the +1, -1, and reset it. Okay, so I'm pretty sure you're way ahead of me. If you are, then try to. We're gonna do count, and we're gonna just whatever. I'm gonna leave it blank for right now. We're gonna have buttons, a button, on click is going to equal, and remember, we've talked about not the quotes. We've talked about this in the last video. This dot, I'm gonna call it handle add 1, and I'm gonna do the +1 right here, +1. And now I'm just going to copy this, paste it 2 more times. Handle -1, and there's going to be a -1 right here. Oops, -1, and handle is a reset, so reset, and I'm gonna just say reset set. All right. Now I've saved it right now. Now what we have to do, like again, guys, every time you're doing functions, you want to call your constructor with the props and super props. Okay. So constructor up here, and I'm gonna pass in the props. And right here, we're gonna call super, passing in props as well. So that way we know the parent class, what it has. And down below, we're gonna actually bind. Remember, we talked about this in the last video. We binded the events so that way it could bind the this. This dot handle add one. Oops. Dot add one equals this dot handle add one dot bind this. And I'm gonna do this 2 more times. So I'm gonna just copy this. And this is going to be handle -1, and this is going to be handle reset. Control save, and we are mostly done. Now we have to actually create our methods. So handle 1, our method. And for right now, I'm just do console.log so that way we do know what's going on. And I'm gonna console log add 1. And I'm gonna copy this. And this is going to be minus. And this is going to be minus handle reset. And I'm gonna take sub and reset. All right, control save. And now we actually have to call it out right here. So I did this way ahead of time. Right here, what we want to change is actually not to run. Right now, I ran the yarn run build, which we don't want to do. We actually want to do yarn run fun. Okay. So over here, terminate, yes. Yarn run fun. Enter, and you should get it rechanged right here, which we don't have nothing rechanged. Let me see what's going on, if anything is going on. Let me see what's going on. Hold on. And I always forget down here we need to actually render out our component. So React DOM, I'm pretty sure you caught this already, dot render. And we want to render our counter, and we want to get document dot get element by ID, and we want to get it by the ID of app. Control save, and React capitalized. Remember to have it all capitalized. DOM document, control save, and there you go. If we actually do add 1, we should have add 1 coming up, -1, and reset. Awesome, everything's working just fine. All right, now to actually put in our state component, or our state, our data. So the first thing we need to do is actually define our default state for every data that we want. So how do we do that? Well, to actually set up our default, we have to call it when we call the class, the counter. And every time we initialize a counter, everything gets initialized in the constructor, right? So inside the constructor, this is where we're going to be calling this dot state, which will give us what we need, setting up our default data values. All right. So this dot state, and then we're gonna have to set up our default values. So for count, our default value is going to be 0. So I'm gonna create remember this dot state is an object, so try to do the key value pair. Key value pair. So our key is going to be our count. I'm gonna just create a variable or a key called count, and it's going to have 0. Now remember, inside of the object is going to be all the data that we want to change. Obviously, for right now, for this application we're building, we only need to change one data. But let's say you have an application that changes a lot of data. In here, you would want to add the data that you want to change. Let's say, for instance, that I have no idea. Any application, you just add a key value pair. So if you wanted to change is dog at one point true, and then for some reason the dog changes and manipulates, I don't know, you're gonna set it to false. But this is where you're gonna add all the data that you want to change. For right now, like I said, we only have one thing that we want to change, and that is count. So down here, what we want is actually to grab the state, the data that's inside of state. So the way we do that is JSX expressions, this dot state dot count. Control save, and now you see a 0 up here. Okay, so this is a simple part. It's just setting up your data. When you initialize inside your constructor, you want to set your default states. So my default state is always going to be 0. So no matter whoever gets in here, it's always going to be a 0. Now we need to manipulate our data. So you might be thinking that since we referenced the object, the key of the object here, that you could actually just change it up here. So I'm gonna just grab this right here, and you're probably thinking, well, if you did that, then you could just, do this, set that equal to this plus 1, right? Well, that is true somewhat, because if we actually look, let me actually count log this dot state dot count. You see that we are getting the values up down there, but as you can see, it's not rendering up here. React has a special way of actually doing this, and it's not by actually doing it this way, although you can, but you would have to do the re-render method again, calling the render method right here, so that way it'll change the state all the time. And that's not what we want. We're trying to get away from this. The way React has it is actually they have this method called this dot, since this is all, you're always going to refer to this. This is a staple from here on out. Dot set state. Set state is the actual method that state is the actual method they use for actually re-rendering and updating the state or the data inside that state. Okay, and what we do in here, it is going to be a function. I'm gonna do an arrow function, and we're going to return something. Okay, I'm just add my semicolons right here. So what we're going to return is literally whatever variable up here, or whatever key that you actually want to update, and we want to return that and manipulate it while returned. So it's still going to be an object with a key value pair down here. So yeah, right here we're going to do count, since we want to update count, and we want to update. Let me just put a hard-coded 1. When we actually add, it'll actually update. You see that it actually updated to 1, but it's not going to do it again since we hard-coded a 1 in there. So the way we actually do this is set state has a lot of actual attributes or parameters that you could use. One of them is we could actually get the previous state of what this counter was. So in here, although prev state, although this is a parameter, you could name it whatever you want, but React, when you actually go to their documentation, they actually use prev state. So I'm gonna just keep on using that, but you can name this whatever you want. But one of the things is we could actually get the previous state of this, whatever the previous state it was, and actually manipulate it that way. If you actually need to reference the previous state, then this will be great for you. And in this case, we do need to reference the previous state because we need to know if we need to, what number is going to be next, right? So down here, we're going to do prev state dot count, because prev state returns an object, and inside that object is going to be what this object was previously. So if we had other things in here like name, something, is going to return an object with count and name as a previous state. So we want to get the previous state dot count because that's the only thing we want. And what we want to do is add 1 to the previous state. Control save, and you actually start adding, and it'll start adding, as you can see, because it's knowing what the previous state is. Now, you might be thinking, well, why do we have to update the name and all that? I mean, if you had more data in here, do you have to update that as well? No, the answer is no. The only thing you want to do is update what you need to update. So right here, handle date add 1. We want to update it by adding 1. We only want to update the count. So we just got the count and updated it by 1. You don't see me in here going, oh, and just leave name as name, prev state dot name. You don't have to do this at all. You don't have to do it. So just get the one that you want to update, and that's it. I'm gonna get rid of this as well. And let's actually do the other ones as well. Handle -1 and handle reset. So we could actually grab this up here if you wanted to. I am, because I'm lazy. Although you should type this out so that way you get your muscle memory going. My muscle memory for this is pretty well, and I just don't want to keep on doing it. So in here, instead of doing +1, we're going to do -1. Sorry about those dings. It's my email. Sorry about that, guys. And right here, all we're going to do for this one is not even going to use, we don't even need prev state, because we're going to literally set this to 0. And that is it. Control save, and you start adding 1. You -1, add more, minus more, reset, minus, plus. It's all working all well. I mean, this is the basics of, I guess states. And states is, you're gonna be working with React, guys. State is used a lot, obviously. It's meant for this, guys. So you're gonna be seeing a lot of states, and a lot of states for like good things as well. You might see states for the toggle of a button to be shown or not shown. That's actually a pretty good one as well. You're gonna be seeing that a lot. And don't worry, guys. We are going to be going more into states once we start getting more into the videos. And you're going to learn so much more. But this is the basics of state. Just remember, when you want to add data, a dynamic data like we did right here, instead of the old app, in the old app, you can actually redo this if you wanted to. And instead of the render, you could actually add in the constructor. Obviously, you would have to add a class. We don't have a class right here. Nope, we don't have one class in the old app. But you could actually re-render. As you can see right now, we're going to be doing that in this new one right here, So I'm pretty sure you could already see where you need to add the data, where it needs to be, and add the proper this.state object and fill it in there. And like I said, guys, one more thing before I go. This.state is relative to this counter class, okay? You don't see, so over here, if you try to do this on your own, which I really do hope you do, but you would want to do title and subtitle. If this is, I don't think this is ever going to be dynamic, but it can be if you wanted to. So you would add a constructor, do all the super stuff and all this stuff. And you're going to set the state, this.state. That wouldn't be great. This one would be great. Handle -1. This is better. Where is it at? Oh, right here. This action right here. This action. You would have the handle pick as a state just for this action. You wouldn't have the handle pick data in options. You wouldn't have that in there. You will only have it relative to the action or the class that you wanted. So handle pick to the action. You would have option and options, I guess, and options. You know what I'm talking about? I hope you know what I'm talking about. I know you do. It's just hard for me to actually explain these kind of stuff. Or sometimes it is hard, sometimes it's not. But that is it, guys. It's pretty simple. Set the state, get the default state. This is always going to be the default state for this particular class counter. And all you do is every time you want to switch the data or change the data, you call this.state on the method, the onClick method or whatever method or whatever event handler that you want. And just call this.state with the function and return whatever you want to return. And that is it. That's literally how you do it. So that's component states. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate you taking time out of your day to watch these videos. And I know my images are getting boring for my thumb images, or what are they called? Thumbnails. There you go. My thumbnail images are pretty horrendous and ugly. Honestly, I'm not a graphic designer, or I'm not a illustrator, so that kind of stuff, I'm just like, whatever, man. Just give it the title. So, but anyways, thanks guys for watching, and I really do appreciate you guys watching it. Leave a comment down below, subscribe if you haven't, and like the video if you liked it, if you learned something new, or dislike it if I did something wrong or said something wrong, I guess. And please leave a comment down below on what I did, so that way I could actually, on my next video, correct it if I can. I'm pretty sure I can, but correct it. But thanks guys for watching, and I appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.